Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well today. I saw an interesting video on X this morning of a guy who's Iraqi, and he's come to Britain at some point in his life. Maybe his parents came here, I'm not quite sure. But he's not too happy with the UK as he doesn't think it's been welcoming enough. And I thought this was such a good example of why multiculturalism is always going to be doomed to fail, why it's got great fault lines running down its very structures, and this really sums up the problem that not just Britain but the modern West has. Now, just before we get into the video, the fella in question is on your screen now, and as you can see, this guy is white passing. You know, if you were to take away the Iraq football shirt and the ringlety hair, trim the beard a bit, he could pass as maybe, a dark Celtic type or a Spaniard or something like that. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because it shows that the issues we face aren't just about skin colour. And the liberal world will love to say, oh, you're racist, they're just different colour to you. But it goes to show these issues run very, very deep. They're culturally influenced as well. And we should remember, culture isn't just ideas as liberal modernity would see it. They are indelible ties to a people, if you will. That's what makes cultures magical and interesting. It's why they're different. There's a topic for another video, but the point being that we have very deep ties to who and what we are.
When you're in England, when you're in the West, you can do whatever you want. They will never ever see you as one of them. As much as you want to pretend. You want to go to the pub with them after work, you want to sit down and have their banter with them or whatever, you will always be an outsider. And I realised that very early on. I'll never be British. I am Iraqi.
Right, so a lot to break down off the bat here. This guy seems to be stating that the British system isn't really built to accept people from the outside. However, as we explore a lot on this channel, that doesn't actually seem to be rooted in reality. Now, I'm in my late 30s, and my whole adult life, the government, the BBC, the mainstream media, corporations have pushed this multiculturalism line. You're just as British as anybody else, no matter where you're from, diversity is a strength, and so on and so on. Further, judging by the inflections on this guy's accent, I'd assume he's been raised in and around London. And remember, London is, quote, super diverse. There aren't really any British people there. But still, he doesn't feel British, even though he's surrounded by people from other parts of the world. And remember, the Brits that you will see in London tend to be the upper middle class Guardian Easter type, so they're going to be very open to an Iraqi trying to become British. They would see him as British off the bat anyway. But despite all of this, that this guy still can't call himself British, he still doesn't feel completely welcomed, tells us something very important, and that's that he's not arguing with the system. He's not even arguing with British people. He's arguing with reality. In essence, somewhere along the line, this guy has fallen for the liberal indoctrination. He's fallen for the line that anybody who comes here magically becomes British. Now, I don't say this because I dislike the guy. I wish him well. I'm glad he's found his Iraqi identity. I say it because the liberal system has lied to millions upon millions of people. This whole thing is like me moving to Japan and then complaining that they don't see me as Japanese. But why would they expect me to? I could love Japan, I could love their culture, I could marry a Japanese woman, but I still wouldn't really be Japanese.
When I'm in England, I'm always on edge. And the part of it is when you wake up, you open a newspaper and you see X, Y, and Z about Muslims, this and that about Arabs. It's not a welcoming place. As much as they want to pretend it is, it's not.
I don't quite know why he feels on edge. It's not like modern London has roaming gangs of white nationalists who just beat up minorities. In fact, when you look at the crime statistics, it's not pleasant reading for the liberal types. And to state Britain isn't welcoming when millions upon millions of people have emigrated here and millions upon millions more want to, while we've completely destroyed our own identity to try and placate our new arrivals, we'll even arrest people if they're too edgy in their criticisms of multiculturalism. You have to wonder what else more could realistically be done so this guy feels welcome. Well, it would be basically to assume the underlying structures which make up his identity, i.e. it would be Muslim and Arab majority. And this brings us to the core point. What this guy is really calling for is his own cultural norms. He wants to be in his own homeland, and when he's not, and it's not reflected back to him, he feels out of place. That's not so much the fault of Britain, it's the fault of the liberal system lying to him. And secondly, he states he opens the newspapers to read stories about Muslims and Arabs. Now, I've never seen any spread about Arabs at all, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. However, you only really see Muslims in the mainstream media if there's been a terror attack. So what's he saying? We just don't report on terror attacks anymore.
They talk about integration, they talk about you assimilating into the culture. Okay, I pay my taxes, I do X, Y, and Z, but where do you draw the line?
Now, there's a big giveaway when he states they talk about integration and assimilation. Who's they? They is the liberal establishment, the uni party. They're the people who bang on about this nonsense. In essence, his conceptualization of Britishness is the liberal regime itself. And then he compounds that by stating, or at least implying, that he should be accepted as British because he pays his taxes here. Now, this exposes something I speak about a lot on this channel. It's the ideology of globalist liberalism, the idea that economics is everything. It's not his fault he thinks this way. He's been taught to think this way by the liberal elite. He states because he pays his taxes, that is, economically commits to the country, that should grant him a sense of British identity. And in that sense, I can sympathise with this guy somewhat. In essence, he's just been lied to by a liberal system which tells him that Britain's a multicultural utopia. You'll come here and have everything your way if you pay into the system, and your value is purely economic.
For me, my whole life, anyone asks me where you're from, Iraqi. The only time I've ever said I'm British when I'm handing someone my passport and I'm trying to get into a country on border control, okay, or I'm about to get arrested. Then I'm British. I'll be honest about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure you're the only person doing that either these days. But this goes to show how cheaply held the British identity is by our elite these days. People knowingly will use their British passports just as a tool to get out of trouble or to get an in into a business opportunity or something. But at the root of all of this is a harsh truth the liberal world just doesn't want to accept, and that's that when people come here, they don't magically become British as soon as their feet touch British soil. This guy is an Iraqi, and that's okay. You know, interesting culture. You got Persia and so on. Good for you. And as I say, I don't say this because I hate this fella. On a personal level, I'll happily wish him well. But it's just like me moving to Japan and saying I'm Japanese. If I married a Japanese wife and had Japanese kids, maybe my kids or grandkids could be fully Japanese, but certainly not me. And despite this, I'm not an immigration purist either. You know, I think immigration can work if the numbers are low, if the people integrate, and if the populace actually want the people to be there. If that's the case, there can be cultural and economic benefits if the numbers are low. But for the past 20 or 30 years, that's not what we've had. We've had insane levels of immigration that the public have consistently voted against, with an insane liberal policy to go with it, which is deeply inhumane. We're at the point now where the host culture isn't just at threat of being swamped, the host people themselves are at threat of being outbred. And fellas like this guy, who've been indoctrinated by the liberal system, seemingly believe that if we don't accept this with glee, we're somehow unwelcoming and unkind and even hateful. And part of me does wonder whether the globalist regime does this on purpose. You know, if they can import millions of people into the Western world and tell them they're just as Western as everybody else and that the host people are evil, that by its very nature creates a national disunity. It means things aren't cohesive, and it means that the globalist powers have complete free reign over nations that have no unity. But anyway, these are just my thoughts. Do let me know what you think down below, and do consider subscribing to the channel if you're new.